In the late 1960s, in a southern city of the United States, where the sky seemed to weigh heavier on some heads than others, lived Claire Thompson. Black, intelligent, and deeply dedicated, Claire had achieved something rare for that era, a stable position as an administrative assistant in a large company with an office in the city center. The tall buildings, the smell of cigarette smoke, and the muffled voices in the hallways formed the backdrop to her daily silent battle. The world outside seemed to be in constant transformation. Civil rights movements were gaining momentum on the streets, but within the walls of that company, change seemed to come slowly, almost hesitant. Claire was a woman who held her head high and kept her heart firm, supported by a Christian faith she had learned from her mother as a girl. From an early age, she understood that her skin color and gender would place her in a vulnerable position in many spaces, but she refused to let that define who she could be or what she could achieve. Working harder than any other colleague and facing disdainful glances and spiteful words, Claire sought solace in silent prayers while typing letters and organizing papers. But the job Claire valued so much was about to become an even harsher challenge. She dreamed of being promoted. She believed that her effort, talent, and loyalty might someday be recognized. However, over time, Claire began to notice a disturbing pattern. For every open promotion, less qualified white colleagues were chosen over her. Her superiors, some of whom treated her with a mixture of disdain and indifference, avoided any conversation about her performance or her expectations for growth. Despite the clear injustices, Claire remained steadfast, believing that God would guide her and that, somehow, her dedication would not go unnoticed forever. To her, work was more than a means of livelihood. It was an opportunity to prove that she could overcome prejudice and build a dignified life in which she and other Black people could believe in a just future. Then, one Friday morning, Claire discovered that a newly hired colleague with half her experience would be promoted to department head. The news hit like a stab. As her colleagues celebrated, Claire's heart broke in silence. But instead of showing anger, she sought refuge in the bathroom, closing the door and kneeling on the cold floor. With hands clasped and her face bathed in tears, she asked God for the strength to carry on. "Lord," she murmured, "give me patience to endure and faith to see beyond this injustice." Little did Claire know that this prayer was the beginning of a journey that would transform her completely, not just as a professional, but also as a person. The path to her redemption and her victory would be long but grand. The morning after hearing about the promotion of the new department head, Claire Thompson arrived at the office with a steady stride, though her heart was still heavy. Every detail of that office now seemed a reminder of everything that held her back. The judging looks, the quiet snickers in the hallways, and the calculated silence of her colleagues only intensified the pain and frustration building up inside her. As she took her place, she found extra work on her desk, tasks that had been transferred to her with the arrival of the new boss, assignments he considered beneath his position. It was clear to Claire that they expected her to accept these tasks without question. The new boss, Bill Harmon, was a young, white, confident man with little humility or respect for those who, like Claire, worked tirelessly. He barely spoke to her, except to give orders or hint that she should speed up her tasks. With every word he spoke, Claire remembered the stories her mother told her about perseverance and faith in difficult times. She knew she was being treated unfairly, but she also knew that showing anger could be seen as weakness or insubordination. What most didn't know or chose to ignore was the immense talent and deep knowledge Claire had about her work. On many occasions, she corrected reports or found errors in projects, ensuring everything was done with precision, yet receiving little thanks. Slowly, however, some of her colleagues began to notice her competence, and at the same time, they grew uncomfortable with how easily she handled complex tasks. This discomfort quickly turned into indifference or envy. Among these colleagues was Sarah, a young white woman who, although she had been with the company for less time than Claire, always had privileges and opportunities. Sometimes Claire felt that Sarah admired her secret, but this admiration was never spoken. Sarah seemed afraid to get close to her, as if doing so would compromise her position with the others. It was as if, for Sarah, keeping a distance from Claire was the best way to ensure her own progress in the workplace. But there was also one colleague who, unlike the others, seemed to see something more in Claire than her appearance and position. His name was Marcus, a young black accountant who had joined the company only a few months before. Whenever they crossed paths, he offered her a supportive smile, and on one of her hardest mornings, he offered her a few comforting words. "Don't let them make you forget who you are, Claire. I know you have something special." She thanked him with a subtle smile, but Marcus could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Days went by, and the injustice became more evident. Not only did her workload increase, but so did the looks of disdain. Bill made a point of ignoring Claire, and when he finally did speak to her, it was only to point out minor mistakes or ask her to repeat a task that was already perfectly executed. She did as he asked, but her eyes held a spark of silent resistance. Every time she felt her spirit waver, Claire would remember the Bible she kept in her drawer, open to a verse about perseverance and faith. In those verses and sacred words, she felt anchored, shielded from all the venom around her. One day, Bill called her into his office, and Claire felt a chill of apprehension. Upon entering, she found her boss flipping through one of her reports with an irritated expression. Without even looking at her, he said, in a cold, sarcastic tone, "Claire, this report is below our standards here. I need you to redo it." She knew the report was flawless. She had reviewed every detail. But with a calm voice, she replied, "Of course, Mr. Harmon. I'll revise it and deliver it by today." He nodded, as if he had done her a great favor. On her way out, Claire felt the tears welling up, but took a deep breath, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her defeated. During lunch, Claire went alone to a small chapel near her workplace. She sat on one of the benches and, in silent prayer, asked for strength. She didn't ask for the difficulties to be removed, but for her faith to remain unshaken, for her integrity to stay pure, and for God to show her the way. She felt an unusual calm fill her chest, and she knew that, somehow, that moment marked a turning point in her journey. When she returned to work that afternoon, Claire was more serene. She had decided that she would not allow the actions of Bill or anyone else to rob her of her peace and dignity. She returned to her desk and continued her work with the same skill, but with a renewed determination. Her goal was no longer just a promotion or recognition from her colleagues. She would work, above all, to honor her own integrity, staying true to the values her mother had taught her. In the weeks that followed, Claire maintained her resolve. Despite the constant humiliations and indifferent treatment, she refused to give up. However, an invisible tension seemed always present, as if something bigger was about to happen. And then an unexpected event occurred. The company announced that it was facing financial difficulties and that a wave of layoffs would be necessary. The atmosphere in the office became even heavier. Hushed conversations, worried looks, and nervous expressions filled the place. The climate of uncertainty affected everyone, but for Claire, there was an added weight. She knew that despite her impeccable work, her position was at risk. As a black woman in that environment, she was likely to be seen as dispensable at the first opportunity. At that moment, her faith was tested in ways she had never imagined. In her nightly prayers, Claire asked God what she should do. She had asked so many times for a chance to grow, a chance to prove her worth. Now, she wondered if she was facing an end instead of a new beginning. Marcus, the supportive colleague, noticed Claire's worried expression and discreetly approached her during the break. "Claire, I know it feels like everything is falling apart now, but maybe this is just a test. Who knows what might come next?" he said, with a smile that tried to convey hope. She smiled back, but inside her was a silent storm. That night, at home, Claire picked up her Bible and, without planning, opened to a verse in Jeremiah that said, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." She felt a wave of peace that brought her a new perspective. That phrase stayed in her mind, and she decided that she would not let doubt consume her. If God had a plan, she needed to trust. The next day, however, the news was devastating. Claire was called into the meeting room, where Bill Harmon, accompanied by 2 other directors, announced that her department would undergo a restructuring Claire would be transferred to a lower prestige position with a reduced salary, a move that bordered on humiliation. For a moment, she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her heart raced, and her breathing grew shallow. All the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the moments of pain, it all felt as though it had been in vain. With a cold, calculated tone, Bill informed her of her new role with an almost disdainful smile, as if he was savoring the moment. He seemed to be waiting for a reaction from her, perhaps an outburst of anger, something he could use against her. But Claire simply nodded, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. She thanked him with a calmness that even surprised herself, and left the room with her head held high. Inside her, a conflict was raging. She knew she was being wronged, but she also knew she needed to keep her dignity intact. In the following weeks, while performing her new job with the same level of excellence, an idea began to take root in her heart. Marcus, who continued to offer words of encouragement, suggested she use her skills elsewhere. But Claire hesitated. After all, she believed her purpose was to succeed in that environment, to prove her worth to those who doubted her. Still, Marcus's suggestion lingered in her mind. More than that, his message made Claire reflect deeply. One Sunday morning, Claire decided to speak with the pastor at her church. Sitting in one of the rows of the small chapel, she shared her dilemma. She felt she was being mistreated, but also knew she shouldn't let resentment fill her heart. The pastor, a wise and experienced man, listened patiently, and after a moment of silence, said, "Claire, God gave you a unique talent, a strength that many try to destroy. But remember, what is yours, no one can take away. Sometimes the path of faith leads us to places where we need to rebuild what's been broken, but we also need to be open to change. If your heart is telling you it's time to seek new paths, perhaps that's God speaking." His words touched something deep within Claire. She knew her mission in that company might be coming to an end, but part of her still resisted the idea of leaving. After all, she wanted to prove she was capable, that her work would not be forgotten. But the pastor's advice, combined with the message of faith in her Bible, began to change her perspective. Back at the office, Claire began making plans. During breaks, she researched new opportunities and discreetly reached out to a few contacts. She felt that perhaps it was time to carve her own path, to use her skills and experience to build something that truly valued her. The work that had once been a means of survival began transforming into a greater purpose. She envisioned creating a space where others like her could feel respected and recognized. Over time, Claire realized her strength did not come from her position, but from her faith and her resilience. When the day finally came for her to hand in her resignation, she felt a mix of relief and peace. Bill looked at her with surprise, but she simply smiled and thanked him for the opportunity to have worked there, making it clear that the decision was hers and hers alone. As she left the building for the last time, Claire took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. She knew that this was not the end of her journey, but the beginning of something much bigger and more meaningful. After leaving her former job, Claire spent a few days at home, allowing herself to feel the weight of everything she had endured. The hostile work environment, the disdainful looks, the frustration of being repeatedly passed over, all these memories came to the surface. However, over time, she realized that her decision to leave was not a defeat, but a choice that required strength and courage. It was as if a window had finally opened, allowing her to see a horizon of possibilities that had been hidden by the oppression of her daily life. With the savings she had put aside, Claire began to develop an idea that had been growing in her heart, to create a consulting service for companies that sought more diversity, respect, and inclusion in the workplace. She knew that this mission would not be easy. Prejudice and resistance to change were still strong, but she was willing to use her own experiences to help other people who, like her, wanted a fair space to grow professionally. For weeks, Claire worked intensely. She studied, planned, and outlined every detail of her project. Sitting at her kitchen table, turned into an improvised office, she created the concept of her consultancy. She decided to call it Faith and Excellence, combining the two pillars of her life. The objective was simple but ambitious: to help companies understand the importance of treating all people with dignity and equity, as well as valuing different perspectives and talents. In her daily prayers, Claire asked for divine guidance. She knew she was about to face new challenges, that the road would be hard, but her faith strengthened her. She believed that God was by her side, and that this project was more than a mere business initiative. It was a life mission. Her first professional contact came through Marcus, the friend and former co-worker who had heard about her initiative and wanted to help in some way. He connected her with a small local company facing difficulties in retaining good employees and needing guidance on inclusive policies and valuing employees. Although it was a small opportunity, Claire accepted with enthusiasm, seeing in it a chance to put into practice everything she had planned. The first meeting with the new company's team was a milestone. As she entered the conference room, Claire felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. She was used to being the subordinate, the one everyone ignored, and now she was the one presenting a solution to improve the work environment. With confidence, she spoke about how valuing employees, especially those from different backgrounds, could transform productivity and organizational climate. The first meetings were a success, and positive results began to emerge quickly. The company saw improvements, such as greater motivation and commitment from employees, and Claire finally felt the satisfaction of seeing her work make a difference. She was building a space where her voice mattered and where her talent was recognized. However, her journey was just beginning, and new challenges would soon arise. As months went by, more small businesses began to seek her out, attracted by the reputation of her work and the unique way Claire approached issues of inclusion and respect in the corporate environment. However, when a large corporation heard about her work and requested a meeting, she realized she would be tested once again. The company in question was a large consulting firm facing criticism for discriminatory practices and unequal treatment. Entering the luxurious meeting room, Claire felt as if she was back in a similar environment to the old office that had hurt her so much. She felt nervous and hesitant. Some of the executives seemed to doubt her abilities, giving her condescending looks. The feeling of being underestimated and facing prejudice seemed to return, and insecurity threatened to take over her heart. Taking a deep breath, she recalled her pastor's words and the promise she had made to herself to remain faithful to her mission. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, said a silent prayer, and then began her presentation. With a firm voice and a confident posture, Claire presented strategies to transform the corporate culture of the company, suggesting changes that would ensure equality and recognition for all employees, regardless of race, gender, or background. She knew her words wouldn't please everyone present, but her unshakable stance made them listen. When she finished, the silence in the room was almost palpable. One of the executives, a middle-aged man who had seemed skeptical from the start, stood up and said, with a discreet smile, "I have to admit, Miss Thompson, your ideas are provocative. This is a path our company has never tried before. But maybe it's exactly what we need." Those words resonated deeply with Claire. She felt that, in some way, God had guided her there to prove that it was possible to challenge systems of oppression and transform the professional environment. The contract was signed, and her consulting firm began to work with the company, training managers, restructuring inclusion policies, and overseeing the gradual changes that began to emerge. With this success, Claire finally felt that her mission was taking shape. She knew she would still face resistance and prejudice, but now she had a platform to influence significant change. Her faith was her shield, and her work was her testimony. Through her journey, Claire not only found the respect she had long sought, but also became an inspiration to others facing similar struggles. The success of Faith and Excellence soon began to attract not only the attention of local companies, but also larger organizations looking to renew their inclusion policies and strengthen their public image. Claire received invitations to speak at universities and leadership conferences. With each presentation, she felt even more inspired to continue, knowing that her personal story was being transformed into a living example of resilience and faith. However, Claire's rise also brought an unexpected wave of resistance from some more conservative companies. Many managers viewed Claire's proposals as a threat to traditional leadership models and meritocracy, and some tried to undermine her work, labeling it as a passing trend or an overly sensitive approach. At a corporate event, an older executive even commented out loud as Claire spoke about the benefits of an inclusive environment. With all due respect, this is all theory, Miss Thompson. The reality of business is different. People have to prove their worth, not gain recognition based on feelings or these inclusion concepts. His words fell like stones in the room, and for a moment, Claire felt her face flush. But she took a deep breath, remembering why she was there. She kept calm and responded firmly, "I agree that everyone should prove their worth. But true meritocracy only exists when everyone has the same opportunities to show what they can do. If we want a fair environment, we need to create a path for each person, regardless of who they are, to give their best." The silence that followed was broken by applause. Many of those present clapped, moved, recognizing Claire's courage and wisdom. Even though the executive who had questioned her remained silent, she knew her words had touched those around her. And at the end of the event, several people approached her, thanking her for her message and sharing personal stories of discrimination or overcoming obstacles in the workplace. But the challenges didn't end there. A few weeks later, Claire received an email from a company that had contracted her consultancy. The message was short but clear. "Miss Thompson, we appreciate your work thus far, but we have decided to terminate the consulting contract." It came as a harsh blow, as that company had been one of the first to hire her services and had been crucial for the initial growth of Faith and Excellence. The reason was not revealed directly, but through other contacts. Claire discovered that the contract was ended due to the influence of a director who disagreed with the proposed changes. This setback deeply shook Claire. She knew she was facing a silent resistance, a kind of hidden sabotage by leaders who preferred to maintain the status quo over transforming their work environments. One lonely night, sitting at her dining table and looking at the accumulated documents and projects, she wondered if she could keep going. Why did it seem that whenever she advanced, something tried to pull her back? But as always, she turned to her faith. The next morning, she went to the chapel, where she sat and opened her heart in prayer. She asked for strength to move forward and discernment to understand the path she should take. And as if fate itself answered her prayer, she received an unexpected call that very day. It was from a civil rights institution that admired her work and wanted to partner with Faith and Excellence. They wanted Claire to help with a social inclusion project in local businesses, addressing the importance of representation and support for minorities in the workforce. The proposal filled Claire with new energy. She felt she was being guided in an even greater direction, as if each challenge was teaching her something important. Now, she had the opportunity to expand her mission beyond corporate environments and touch the lives of people seeking their first job opportunities without the weight of social prejudice. She accepted the proposal, and soon she began working on training programs for young people from marginalized communities, preparing them for the market and teaching them to face prejudice with intelligence and resilience. This new project brought an even deeper meaning to Claire's work. She was not only helping companies transform, but also empowering people to enter the market with confidence. In one of the training sessions, as she spoke with a young woman named Alicia, who had faced discrimination in several job interviews, Claire saw herself in the young woman. Alicia was Black, brilliant, and determined, but like Claire, she had been silenced so many times that she doubted her own worth. Seeing Alicia hesitant during an interview simulation, Claire looked into her eyes and said, "Alicia, you're capable of reaching any position you dream of, but you need to believe first. God gave you a special talent, and you have to trust that even when doors close, He will be opening others. Don't give up, and don't let anyone define what you can or cannot be." These words were not only for Alicia, they were also for Claire. She felt that with each lesson, she was reaffirming for herself the importance of her mission and the value of her faith. And each time she saw these young people overcoming barriers, Claire knew she was on the right path. As time passed, Faith and Excellence grew even more. It was no longer just a consulting firm. It had become an organization that transformed lives, gave a voice to the voiceless, and fought for a world where everyone could work in an environment of respect and equality. Claire knew that despite the challenges and resistance, she was fulfilling the purpose God had placed in her life. With the growth of faith and excellence, and the positive impact her organization was generating, Claire became a recognized figure among communities and companies, especially those seeking a more inclusive and human transformation in their workplaces. Her inspiring journey caught the attention of the local media, and she was invited to participate in a radio program to talk about her initiatives and the importance of a fair and welcoming corporate culture. However, with the exposure also came unexpected opposition. A large company, famous for maintaining conservative practices and an extremely rigid organizational culture, launched a public campaign attacking the relevance and seriousness of Claire's work. The company's president, a man known for opposing social changes and inclusion, made public comments suggesting that companies like Claire's were harming the meritocratic spirit and promoting fragility in the workplace. The attacks came like a wave, unexpectedly and brutally. That same week, headlines and articles surfaced insinuating that Claire exploited sensitive situations for personal gain and that her organization lacked credibility. It was a carefully calculated strategy to delegitimize her work and damage her reputation, a way to undermine her image and possibly deter future clients. Claire was deeply shaken. The situation affected her in a way she had not expected. In her mind, doubts began to surface. Could they be right? Am I really doing harm? This was the greatest trial she had faced so far, as it was not just about resisting discrimination or prejudice. Now, it seemed that her entire mission was being attacked in a way that threatened to destroy everything she had worked so hard to build. That night, Claire retreated to her room, knelt down, and prayed, pouring out all her frustrations and doubts before God. She asked for strength to face this storm and wisdom to know what to do. She felt the weight of the situation in her chest, as if each attack on her integrity was an open wound. In tears, she murmured, "Lord, if this truly is my mission, please guide me. I need your direction." After that prayer, Claire remembered her mother's words, "No matter what they say, you know the truth in your heart." This lifted her up, and she decided she would not surrender. She realized that she needed to face this battle with the same dignity with which she had faced all others. She then decided to respond to the attacks in a clear and authentic way. The next day, Claire went to a local TV station and gave an interview in which she shared her personal story and explained the motivations behind faith and excellence. She spoke about the positive impact of her work, the lives that had already been transformed, and her unshakable commitment to justice and equality. She reaffirmed that her mission was not just a job, but a calling, something she believed was inspired by God to help people find a more humane and welcoming work environment. The interview had an unexpected impact. Many people sympathized with Claire, sending messages of support and thanks for her courage. The local community rallied around her, and several religious leaders and influential figures began openly supporting her work, recognizing the importance of her mission. But the trials were not yet over. Sometime later, Claire discovered that one of her consulting firm's most important clients was about to terminate their contract with her, pressured by the same rumors and controversies that were circulating. This would represent a significant financial loss for her organization and threatened to directly affect the youth training programs that Claire valued so much. Once again, Claire found herself facing a difficult decision. She could defend herself publicly, exposing the unjust attacks and responding with equal intensity. But instead, she chose to focus on her values and the faith that sustained her. She decided to gather her team and called a meeting with the leaders of the company in question to clarify her consultancy's intentions and show the real impact of her work. In the meeting, Claire remained calm and focused. She spoke about the ongoing projects, the results being achieved, and how the investment in a more inclusive culture was bringing real benefits to the company. In the end, one of the directors, visibly impressed, said, "Claire, thank you for your honesty and courage. You know, I myself was reluctant when they proposed this partnership, but seeing your commitment to the work really changes our perception." With a smile, he added, "I think we are all ready to continue with this project, and you can count on our support." That was a moment of redemption. Claire felt as if a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She had overcome that attack with patience, faith, and an unshakable stance, and the result was a renewed confidence in her mission. More than that, she realized that by staying true to her beliefs, she had inspired others to reevaluate their own prejudices. Over time, faith and excellence became a symbol of resilience and transformation in the corporate world. New companies sought her services, inspired by Claire's story and the work she was doing. Her consulting firm expanded, allowing her to reach even more people and strengthen the values she defended. That trial of faith, which nearly made her give up, became the turning point that solidified her as one of the most respected and influential voices in her field. And Claire knew more than ever that she was exactly where God wanted her to be. After the major victory that solidified the credibility of faith and excellence in the market, Claire felt more confident than ever. The demand for her services increased, and companies from other states sought her consulting firm to help implement inclusion policies and create more welcoming work environment. The success was immense, and for the first time, Claire was able to hire a larger team to help manage the company's growth. Her new employees were people who, like her, believed in a greater mission and shared the vision of a future where opportunities were truly accessible to everyone. Despite the positive growth, Claire soon realized her role was changing. Previously, she handled training and consulting directly. Now, she needed to manage a team, make strategic decisions, plan expansions, and take on responsibilities beyond her experience. The transition to this new role brought up a series of questions, and Claire found herself feeling uncertain, trying to balance leading the consultancy with preserving the essence of her mission. One of her first challenges in this new role came when an important investor offered a large financial contribution to expand faith and excellence to other regions. The proposal was tempting. With this funding, Claire could open offices in other cities, hire more professionals, and amplify the impact of her organization. However, there was a condition. The investor suggested that faith and excellence focus solely on large corporations and reduce its services to small businesses and communities. Claire thought deeply about this proposal. Although growth was an invaluable opportunity, she knew that small businesses and local communities were an essential part of her mission. After all, it was precisely for these often overlooked people that she wanted to make a difference. For several nights, Claire dedicated herself to prayer and reflection, asking for guidance on the right path to follow. She felt that her faith was being tested once more, as if she had to choose between material growth and spiritual commitment. Finally, with a calm heart, Claire made her decision. She met with the investor and explained, with sincerity, that faith and excellence would not abandon its initial mission. Although the funding was tempting, she was unwilling to sacrifice the values that had built the company and given purpose to her work. The investor, though disappointed, respected her decision, and Claire felt a profound sense of peace for choosing to remain true to her principles. In the months that followed, the decision to stay true to her mission proved wise. Thanks to an awareness campaign that her team launched on social media, more people learned about the work of faith and excellence, and support for the cause grew naturally. People shared their stories of overcoming discrimination in the workplace, inspired by Claire's example and the vision of a more humane corporate culture. During this period of expansion, Claire was also invited to give lectures at educational institutions, discussing the impact of diversity and inclusion with young professionals. During one of these lectures, she met Samira, a young woman in her early 20s who had faced discrimination early in her career. Samira, a talented black woman, often felt invisible and discredited. During the lecture, when Claire mentioned her own struggle against prejudice and the importance of faith and perseverance, Samira was moved and approached Claire after the event. "Claire, I want to be like you," Samira said, her eyes shining with hope. "I want to show the world that I can be valued for who I am. But it's so hard." Samira's voice trembled with emotion. Claire held the young woman's hands and looked into her eyes, saying, "You're already incredible, Samira. What you need now is to believe that your struggle is valid and that you can go far beyond what others say. Don't let anyone define your limits. And remember that, wherever you go, God will be with you. Claire's words seemed to light a spark of hope in Samira, who left inspired to continue on her path. This encounter reminded Claire of why she began her journey. More than achieving success, she wanted to be a source of hope for those who felt undervalued and forgotten. However, not everything was easy. With growth came new internal challenges and management issues she was still learning to handle. Some team members began questioning the organization's priorities, suggesting they focus solely on high-profile clients to maximize profits. Claire knew she needed to listen to her team, but she also felt it was important to remind everyone of the essence of faith and excellence and what had united them there. So, Claire called a team meeting. Standing in the center of the room, she calmly shared the story of her early struggles and the motivations that led her to establish the consulting firm. She emphasized that the purpose of faith and excellence went beyond profit. It was about building a legacy of justice, respect, and dignity. Her words resonated deeply with the team, and many remembered why they had chosen to be part of that mission. The meeting ended with a feeling of renewal, and the team left motivated to support the company's growth without losing sight of its core values. Leaving that meeting, Claire was filled with a deep gratitude. She knew that staying true to her mission would not always be easy, especially amid growing success and external pressures. But she believed her faith was guiding her, and that by staying true to herself, she was also honoring the divine calling she had felt from the start. At the end of that day, alone in her office, Claire opened her Bible and read in silence, finding peace and direction in the sacred words. She felt that, despite the difficulties, her path was expanding in a way she had never imagined, and she knew that as long as she continued to walk in faith, she would be able to face any challenge. With the expansion of faith and excellence came new challenges that Claire hadn't anticipated. The workload increased, deadlines tightened, and with the hectic pace, some of the team members began to feel overwhelmed and dissatisfied. Tensions started to accumulate, and a sense of discontent began to emerge among the employees. The issue worsened when one of her key team members, Jared, who had been with Claire since the beginning and had helped build the company, openly questioned Claire's choices during a planning meeting. He argued that faith and excellence should expand more aggressively, focusing on large corporations to increase profits and ensure greater financial stability. Claire, we're spending too much time on projects that aren't profitable enough. Ideally, we should prioritize clients that bring in more return and leave small businesses for later, he said directly. Claire listened to Jared calmly, but she felt a knot forming in her chest. This wasn't the first time he had suggested shifting the organization's focus. She knew that many on her team were starting to view faith and excellence as an ordinary consultancy, while she deeply believed that the company's mission was much bigger. With a calm expression, Claire replied, "Jared, I understand that we need financial sustainability, and you're right to be concerned about growth. But our purpose has always been to support those who need it most. If we abandon that, we'll lose the essence of who we are." Jared remained silent, but his expression showed his disagreement. That night, Claire realized that something deeper was unfolding. The team was divided. Some fully supported her vision of impacting small businesses and communities, while others believed the company should focus on profits and accelerated growth. In the days that followed, Claire noticed that the situation started to affect productivity and the organizational climate. Quiet conversations, evasive glances, and tensions in the hallways indicated a brewing crisis. Determined to resolve the issue transparently, Claire called a meeting with all the employees, aiming not only to listen, but also to reaffirm the values that had brought everyone together. During the meeting, Claire began by sharing her own story once again, from her early days in her previous job to the struggles she had faced founding faith and excellence. She spoke of the faith that guided her every step and the importance of keeping the purpose alive, even amid hardships. She then opened the floor for her team to share their concerns and suggestions. Jared was the first to speak, expressing once again his opinion about the need to focus on bigger clients. Encouraged by him, other team members also voiced the stress and overload they felt with the intense work pace and the uncertainty about the company's future. Their words were direct and even critical, and Claire felt the weight of each one. But as she listened to all the opinions, Claire realized that, in her dedication to growing the company, she might not have given enough attention to the needs and well-being of her own team. She understood that she needed to reassess the balance between purpose and sustainability for everyone involved. With a calm voice, she responded to them all. "I appreciate your honesty and for bringing your concerns to light. It's important that we find balance. I never want anyone here to feel undervalued or insecure, but we also need to remember that our mission is what brought us this far. If we forget that, we'll just be another company without a cause to stand for." There was a moment of silence. Claire realized she needed to take another step. After the meeting, she called Jared and a few other key team members for individual conversations, showing that she was willing to find solutions and asking for their help to reshape the work so that everyone felt valued. In the days that followed, changes began to take shape. Claire proposed adjustments to short-term goals, set up rest periods for the team, and implemented new processes to improve the work environment. Above all, she committed to ensuring that everyone felt part of the mission she believed to be greater than any obstacle. Gradually, the atmosphere in the office improved. Jared, who had initially resisted the idea, started to reconnect with Claire's vision, acknowledging the value of her resilience and empathy in dealing with challenges. He even apologized for being so critical, admitting that sometimes the focus on profit had blinded him to the true essence of the organization. Time taught Claire even more valuable lessons. She learned that in moments of crisis, staying true to original values was crucial, but listening to those around her was essential to keeping the team united. By facing the crisis with humility and flexibility, Claire strengthened her team's trust, and now they felt part of something meaningful. That was a turning point for the consultancy. Claire understood that leadership was a path of constant learning, and that God was guiding her to transform her mission, not only into a successful company, but into a community of people committed to a greater cause. After the internal crisis and the strengthening of the team, faith and excellence entered a period of peace and stable growth. With unity restored and the work expanding, Claire believed that the worst was behind her. But life had other plans, and a new challenge would soon arise, demanding even more faith and resilience from Claire. One day, Claire received a formal letter at the reception of her company. It was a legal notice. One of the most influential corporations with which her company had worked was suing her, claiming that her inclusion policies had caused damage to productivity and that the changes proposed by Faith and Excellence had resulted in a loss of efficiency. For Claire, these accusations were a shock. She knew they were unfounded and unjust, but she understood that the power of a large corporation could complicate things even further. Receiving the news, Claire felt lost. How could someone who believed so deeply in the power of her work and in her spiritual calling face such a great and cruel threat? Suddenly, it seemed like the entire structure she had built with such effort could crumble. With a restless mind and a heavy heart, Claire withdrew to the chapel where she had always found comfort and guidance. Sitting on one of the benches, she silently prayed, letting her words flow. "Lord, if this is the path I should follow, please show me a way out. Give me the strength not to give up. I know this mission came from you, and I trust that you will give me direction." The peace she felt there didn't bring immediate answers, but it reignited in Claire the certainty that somehow there would be a greater purpose in all of it. She returned to the office with a renewed spirit, determined to face the lawsuit with firmness and transparency, without giving in to pressure. Gathering her team, she explained the situation sincerely and asked for everyone's support. The team, which had once been divided, now showed unity and readiness to fight alongside Claire. Each of the employees expressed their unconditional support, reaffirming their commitment to the mission of faith and excellence. It was an emotional moment for Claire, who saw the same passion and determination that guided her reflected in the faces of her team. Together, Claire and her team prepared a solid defense, presenting evidence that her inclusion policies were, in fact, bringing benefits to the corporation that had filed the suit. Additionally, they gathered testimonials from employees and managers of other companies showing how the consultancy had promoted a culture of respect, engagement, and productivity. Even with all the evidence, the lawsuit dragged on for weeks. Claire faced sleepless nights and intense days of preparation and meetings with lawyers. And while the legal battle continued, she remained active on social media and in the press, defending the importance of inclusion and the values faith and excellence promoted. Her public presence, far from harming her image, strengthened her as a leader fighting for justice. Many people were inspired by her struggle and sent messages of support, reaffirming that Claire was not alone. Finally, after months of tension, the trial took place, and Claire was called to testify. Entering the courtroom, she felt the weight of her entire journey. She took a deep breath, knowing that every word would represent not only her defense, but also the defense of her values. During her testimony, she explained clearly and firmly the purpose of her company and the importance of the changes she proposed. With a calm and confident voice, she declared, "I believe a true company is built on respect and dignity. Faith and excellence exist to show that it's possible to be productive while treating all employees with equality and respect. Our values are our strength, and I know that together we can transform the workplace into a space where everyone can flourish." Claire's words deeply touched not only those present in the courtroom, but also her team, who accompanied her, and the public following the case. In the end, the judge ruled that there was no evidence to justify the lawsuit, and the company that had tried to harm her had to back down. The victory was a moment of liberation for Claire. She felt as if the weight of the last few months had finally lifted. But more than that, the trial brought her a new perspective. She understood that her mission went beyond consulting and corporate policies. Her purpose was to represent the hope and transformation that so many people were seeking. Following the victory in court and the growing support from the community, Faith and Excellence had become not just a consultancy, but a true movement. People from various parts of the country began to seek out Claire's work, inspired by her story of resilience and her unwavering stance on faith and integrity. But with success came new challenges, both practical and emotional, that would demand an extra dose of wisdom and courage from Claire. The rapid expansion meant more demands, more clients, and a growing team. Now, not only local companies and small corporations, but also major multinationals were reaching out to her consultancy to reformulate their inclusion policies and implement training that could transform their organizational cultures. With a packed agenda and the need to open new offices in other cities, Claire realized that she would need to delegate more responsibilities and place even more trust in her team. However, this expansion also brought a certain discomfort. Claire knew that as the company grew, there was a risk of losing some of the essence of faith and excellence. After all, her work had started with a vision of helping local communities and people who are often forgotten by large corporations. Now, with such influential clients, Claire worried that the values she had always defended could get diluted among financial and bureaucratic interests. It was during this period that Claire received a proposal that left her divided. A multinational company offered her an exclusive partnership to implement global inclusion programs. The contract was worth millions and would allow her consultancy to reach countries where prejudice and discrimination were still very sensitive issues. However, as a condition, the multinational required Faith and Excellence to assume the image of its exclusive partner, giving priority to its projects and limiting its work with other companies. For days, Claire pondered over the proposal. The offer was tempting, as it would expand her mission to places she had never thought of reaching. Still, if she accepted, she risked tying her consultancy to the interests of a single company, putting at risk the independence she so valued to work wherever her heart felt was needed. The situation was delicate, and Claire felt pressured by the magnitude of the decision. Once again, Claire returned to the chapel for guidance. There, in silence, she reflected on her journey and what she truly desired. She knew that the calling of her mission was not just about growth and visibility, but about bringing justice and hope to those who needed it most. After a heartfelt prayer, Claire felt at peace. She knew what she had to do. The next day, she called her main advisors and shared her decision. She would not accept the exclusive partnership with the multinational. She explained that while global growth was important, she was not willing to sacrifice her independence and her commitment to smaller local communities. She felt the weight of responsibility, but she knew it was the right decision to keep the essence of faith and excellence intact. Her team's response was one of full support. They understood that above all, faith and excellence was an organization built on solid principles and a vision of deep transformation. Claire's decision was not just a business choice. It was a reaffirmation of the values that bound them all. In the months that followed, Claire found new partnerships that respected her consultancy's independence and allowed her to continue acting freely. Additionally, she began to dedicate more time to the mentorship program for young people and opened new social initiatives in underserved communities. Slowly, she saw her mission take on a form that went beyond any expectation. Faith and excellence was becoming a symbol of empowerment for people of all ages, especially for those who, like Claire, faced prejudice in their lives. During one of these initiatives, Claire met Miguel, an 18-year-old who had come from a poor neighborhood and was trying to find his way into the corporate world, but often felt discouraged by prejudice and lack of opportunities. Talking with him, Claire felt an immediate connection. Miguel reminded her of herself at the beginning of her career, full of dreams, but crushed by a reality that insisted on limiting him. With patience and kindness, Claire began mentoring him personally, helping him build confidence, develop leadership skills, and, most importantly, cultivate a positive vision of his own future. She taught him not only about the corporate world, but also about resilience, faith, and the power of never abandoning one's own values. For Claire, seeing Miguel and other young people grow and overcome barriers was one of the greatest rewards her work could bring. Miguel's story, along with those of many other young people, showed Claire that her mission was only beginning. With confidence in God and the vision He had given her, she knew that faith and excellence still had much to accomplish, and that its impact would continue to spread, transforming lives in ways she had never imagined. After deciding to decline the exclusive partnership and expand her work independently, Claire began to feel that the impact of faith and excellence was growing beyond what she could have imagined. The company was not just a consultancy, it was a symbol of hope and transformation for thousands of people. Companies that had never considered changes to their organizational culture were now seeking her help to become more inclusive and respectful. Claire's work was transforming the corporate world and inspiring people across the country. With her growing success, Claire received an unexpected invitation, the opportunity to speak at an international conference on diversity and inclusion to be held in Geneva, Switzerland. She had been nominated as one of the keynote speakers, representing not only faith and excellence, but also all those who believed in a more humane and welcoming work environment. The invitation was an honor, but also made her nervous. Claire had always seen herself as a local consultant, someone who transformed small communities and helped people find dignity and purpose. Standing before leaders and influencers from around the world made her question whether she was truly ready for this role. That night, as she reflected on what she would say, Claire remembered her journey and all the challenges she had overcome. She felt her heart calm as she realized that her mission was, above all, to inspire. With renewed courage and faith, she accepted the invitation and began preparing a speech that would convey her vision of a world where each person is treated with respect, regardless of race, origin, or social status. When the day of the conference finally arrived, Claire found herself in a large auditorium with people of various nationalities and cultures waiting to hear her speak. Taking a deep breath, she began to share her story of resilience and the founding of Faith and Excellence, how a Black Christian woman had transformed her difficulties into a strength that now changed lives and inspired others to believe in a better future. It's not just about business. It's about people, Claire said, with a firm and steady voice. Throughout my life, I've seen how prejudice and indifference can stifle the talents we carry. Today, I'm here to say that it is possible to create a workplace where every person has the right to be seen and respected. And that transformation begins with each of us, in the decisions we make, the love we cultivate for others, and the courage to fight for true justice. Claire's words resonated as a call to action, and when she finished, she received a standing ovation. The emotion was intense, and she knew that this moment symbolized more than a personal achievement. It was proof that her faith and mission were reaching the world. Shortly after the conference, Claire was approached by representatives of several international organizations interested in supporting and financing faith and excellence initiatives. Educational institutions asked her to collaborate on developing leadership programs for young people from minority groups, and multinational companies invited her to offer strategic consultancy. Claire was moved, but she knew that with these opportunities came even greater responsibilities. Back in the United States, Claire began expanding faith and excellence to a national and even international level. She launched a series of training programs in partnership with universities, offering free training to young people from underserved communities. She also created a network of mentors who would help minority individuals enter the workforce and find support in their career journeys. One of her most important projects emerged after a visit to a high school in an underprivileged community. Talking to students, Claire heard stories of young people who faced discrimination and financial hardship but dreamed of a different future. Inspired, she decided to launch a scholarship program to support these young people. The initiative allowed talented and committed students to pursue their education and professional development without the financial obstacles that often prevented their dreams. The project, called Legacy of Hope, quickly gained support and grew, providing many young people with the opportunity to gain skills and find meaningful careers. The program included not only scholarships but also workshops on resilience, leadership, and personal development. The initiative became an extension of Claire's work, reflecting the essence of her mission to create a future where everyone could flourish and contribute their unique talents. With time, Claire's legacy became a beacon for others. The name Faith and Excellence was now widely recognized, and she had inspired the creation of similar programs in various cities. Claire's influence had expanded far beyond what she could have imagined when she started, and she knew that the impact of her mission would continue to resonate in the lives of future generations. Finally, one day, as she revisited her old community and met people who had been impacted by her work, Claire felt a deep sense of gratitude. She knew that her journey had not been easy, but that each step, each test of faith, and each moment of struggle had been necessary to build what she now saw before her, a network of people committed to justice, equality, and the power of transformation. In a final meeting with her team, Claire shared one last reflection. We all have a purpose that goes beyond ourselves. Each of you has the ability to touch other people's lives and inspire them to see the best in themselves. Remember that our mission doesn't end here. It continues to grow through the actions of each one of us. With that, faith and excellence solidified itself as a true movement for transformation and hope. Claire, with her unwavering faith and courage, had left a profound mark, a legacy that would continue to transform lives and inspire generations for many years to come.